Today I'm hanging out with Darian Brown. Darian has a discus PR of 63.02, set in 2023. He was an NCAA D1 All-American in both discus and shot put. When he graduated from Texas State University in 2015, he held school records in both indoor and outdoor shot, weight, and hammer. His college PRs of 58.11 in the discus, 19.53 in the shot put, 20.85 in the weight, and 60.51 in the hammer, making him one of the most versatile and well-rounded throwers of his age. Darian's story is one of tenacity, adaptability, confidence, and maturity. Thanks for being on and taking the time to do this. I think your story's cool. Like you're also a father. I got to be there when Cassius came into the world, and coaching you and Miss Julie, so Mrs. Brown. So I had the privilege of I got to coach you at Texas State for a year until Kev got me shipped out, and then as Kev does. But then stayed in touch through that time, and then picked it up when we all moved to Kansas together, type of thing. So. Been coaching you since then, mostly remotely now, but I want to take the time to have your story out there and talk about some of the things that you've learned through this, and hopefully you can give back to the next generation via this platform. So the first thing I was asking was, what things do you feel like you do well as an athlete?
Or strengths in general was kind of how I originally took the question. Kind of start off physically, I'd say legs. I've always had a strong base, typically always stronger than the field, just kind of naturally happens. And to be able to not only be strong, but to have mobility within that from a physical perspective is things that is kind of the strength that I have over the field and typically have for quite a while. Outside of just those physicals, I'd say body awareness and coordination. How quickly I was able to come into college and pick up each event and not really have much prior knowledge and understanding before that, and run with it. I think I would attribute to having more body awareness and coordination, and can take cues and run with them a little bit easier
for sure
than others.
Yeah, I'm gonna back you up real quick. So you've said strong legs, and one of my favorite stories when I coached you at Texas State was we were doing a box squat. We were doing off the bench, but you got up to 700 pounds, and we were just loading it, and we just kept I don't know if you've seen Unbreakable. Have you seen that movie with Bruce Willis? He's doing it with a bench press, but he's figuring out he's a superhero with super strength, and we just kept loading the weight on. you're like, no, I don't want to do this. I was like, come on, D, we'll just try it. You put it on, and it was like 600. It was just like easy. You just like smoked. I think we were doing threes. You just bop. Yeah, let's add more weight. You're like, come on, man, I already did my sets. I'm like, no, let's just see. And we did like 650 and bop. You're like, you're kind of groaning it. Like, nah. Put 700 on the bar, and you just like. And you start bouncing that bar. It's like bang. You're like, I will never do that again.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. We don't want to hurt your back, but like that was just like, just walk in almost type of. I wouldn't say walk in, but like you developed it through that whole fall and stuff, and just you're strong enough to throw very far. So strong legs. We wouldn't say like the same with the bench press, but your Olympic lifts has always been good. I think you use your legs well as far as numbers are concerned. Yeah, feeling how to pop up and stuff.
Right.
And then the other thing I think about too is, what were your high school marks coming in to college?
It was 167 feet in the discus with the 1.6, and then shot put I was a glider, but it was 56 feet in the shot.
Yeah. And then as a freshman, you threw further than both of those marks. By a significant amount, especially in discus, right?
It was 182.10 in the discus freshman year, and then I think I actually tied my shot. It was like 56.11 or maybe just
Yeah.
around 7 feet. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
that was
switch
pretty
to
cool.
spin, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, rotation definitely helped
Yep.
in
Yep.
that.
So you're one of those guys that exceeded your high school marks as a freshman, which
Hmm.
usually that's pretty tough to do. Like when I'm coaching people, I say, hey, like we just want to get over your high school marks. Like why you're here is because you threw far enough in high school, but when you
Hmm.
elevate as a male thrower to the college implements, let's get over your high school marks. Well, I mean, you did that year one, so
Yeah, yeah.
not that your marks were these world beating distances, but still, like that
Hmm.
shows like you know, like you were saying, like some of your awareness in your body, your ability to do that. You're good at multiple sports. You played multiple,
Yeah.
um, basketball, football type of thing. So,
Hmm.
did you do any other sports in high school?
No, those and then track. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of the three. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's the focus. But yeah, definitely came in very raw and just ready to learn. And yeah, I mean, I do think I picked it up a lot easier than what people typically do. And
Hmm.
bad habits are easy to, I guess, defer away from compared to other people I've seen or
Hmm.
teammates at that time. So yeah.
Hmm. So when you're saying like body awareness as a discus thrower, like what things do you feel um, like you say like you do that well? Like, do you
Hmm.
have that compared to other people, or can you dive into that a little bit more? Like, I always
Yeah,
say
yeah,
discus throwing is about
but
feel. You have to
yeah. So
feel what you're doing.
definitely during the cues being given, I see countless people just kind of turn right back and look at you like, what happened? And it's,
Hmm.
you're in the ring, you should be knowing exactly what's happening in the ring and where things are. And I always took it upon myself to, if you gave me a cue or say on that one, I was like, all right, I didn't feel yet. Or I'd ask you to give me a couple of throws to really kind of feel this out and to try to execute what you're giving me. And then
Yeah.
I can kind of take that and run with it. And then from there, it's more about building consistency and certain cues that might come to mind. In college, we kind of kept it a little bit more generalized and vague because I did have multiple events. So I think like the cues were really pendulum and getting a quick left, which feeling your orbit, oftentimes a lot of discus throwers might even struggle with this, especially starting out. And it was something that I was able to take off with and really understand and move and accelerate out of specific positions and understand how to do that fairly
Right.
quickly. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, I think that you touched on. So there's the awareness aspect, but also the accountability of it,
Hmm.
which that's something that is special because a lot of people are just like you said, they'll like, well, tell me what I just did. It's like I felt
Hmm.
one thing, but I need to confirm it with you. Whereas what you're
Right.
saying is like, no, I am trying to do this. It felt X successful. Like, what do
Hmm.
you think on that? So there's more of an accountability, and the definition of accountability is be responsible or be able to report on your time, effort, energy, things like
Right.
that. So being accountable to what your actions are and like knowing your process, like just give me a few more throws
Right.
and I'll work through it. I'll figure this out. I'll develop like baby steps towards the next thing. So 100% I agree with that. And that's people just like boil that down to having a good feel, you
Mhm.
know. But really, there's more parts to that. Like any one of those fall off, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely good at that. And what do you attribute that to? Because being accountable is a word people hate to hear, but I think that's pretty key to be successful especially as a discus thrower.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think you can attribute that to anything in life in general. But whenever you want to be good at things and you have somebody that has the knowledge, you shouldn't just look at it as just teach me and I keep my mouth shut, but more so from a collaborative standpoint. And so when I'm at practice and I have you back there, I'm trying to collaborate with you on what we're working on,
Hmm.
not necessarily fighting, but this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm working on. Give me a little bit until I can get to a certain point to where your input is not only understood, but I can execute it. And so understanding how to do that. And, if I'm out in far left field, you'll let me know. But um, just having that base understanding or that mentality whenever you come to practice to approach it in such way, you get more out of your training period versus just being a blank slate. And I used to hate seeing people come to practice and they literally forgot everything they learned the day before, and you just spent hours doing it. And in my head, it's pointless in showing up with that mentality, right?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
want to do the
exactly.
exact opposite.
Yep, yep. And so if I would, say that succinctly, it's you're responsible for your own success, right? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna build what I did yesterday, and I'm just gonna pick up right where I left off.
Right.
Like I'm
Yeah.
just gonna keep doing that, and I'm gonna be responsible for that, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to putting it on someone else. Like I think it's easy to just say like, oh, I'm coachable. I'll just do what my coach says. Like, no, no, no. I need to be the one responsible for this, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
have my own system, my own progress there, and then like it's collaborating. Like, this is what I'm
Right.
feeling. What do you see? Is there anything I can add to my repertoire, or can I refine this a little bit more? And it's not ever anything that's like a fight. It's
Yeah.
collaboration. Like, hey, I'm working
Mm-hmm.
on this. Like, hey, maybe this will help you do this a little bit better. And I think that's something that again comes down to responsibility. Like at the end of the day, I'm responsible for my own progress, my own success. So trying
Yeah.
to say that succinctly, hopefully.
No,
Yeah,
no,
not putting
definitely.
words in your mouth. Yeah, but yeah, I think that's valuable. And
Yeah.
maybe that's partly just some maturity aspects of it, but also, like I wouldn't say everybody like has that ready made. Like I know exactly what I need to do. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're like, hey, I just want to learn. I was a blank slate in some ways when I first started, but then I learned like, hey, this works for me, and I want to keep adding to that is
Right.
valuable. It's accountability and responsibility, right? So
Yeah.
very much so. I would say you are very good at that for sure.
Awesome.
So
Thanks.
yeah, any other things that you would say, things you do well, advantages?
I mean, there's things that I'm getting better at, but I wouldn't say in terms of comparing me to the field, that would really set me apart. I mean, I think those are really the two things, right? Like, and to carry it even further in terms of the body awareness and coordination, to be able to duplicate that in a meet, right? You don't want to just go completely left field, but especially when you've been there and you've been able to give me a cue, and in comp I can readjust that and not necessarily just go sporadic. Like
Hmm.
I've seen that happen a lot. But to be physically present in that moment and being able to adjust accordingly is important. And
Yeah,
yeah, I've seen that a lot as well. So
yeah, for sure. I say like competing well, and this is something you do fairly well when you're out at training too, is competing against yourself, or like, hey,
Mhm.
watch me hit this one, or a little bit of smack talk maybe between different people, and just being able to say like, hey, like this one, and that's why I say when you boil down like being a good competitor is really just being able to throw far for you, whatever that is, on
Mhm.
command. Like this next one needs to be better. And you've been in some like you made the national meet on your
Mhm.
third throw. When I was coaching you in the discus, it's just like you had to do it on that last throw. Like that's really what being a good competitor is. I need to throw 58 right now,
Yeah.
and then you're able to hit that one. And it's like, yep, yep, now we made it. So, and that's what you boil it all down to, because there was adrenaline the whole time, but that third
Mhm.
round is when you got it done. So,
Yep.
yeah. So, and that's one of those things. It's fun there. So, but yeah, I would say that as well. You've been in,
Awesome.
been up against the wall, burn the ships, and still throw it well. So,
Yeah, I unfortunately put myself into too many of those situations, but yeah.
that's the only way to feel alive, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't just need to be at a meet. I need to feel like, you know.
All the first two, and then this is all you got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, maybe I draw that. Like
Hmm.
I say with Brooke, she's been in those scenarios more times than I would love to
Yeah.
admit to. So,
Hard stop moments. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, any other things there as far as
You
niches
know,
or advantages you would say that is part of why you've been successful?
I mean, all of that kind of bringing into one really helps the confidence.
Hmm.
I'm extremely confident whenever I'm looking at the field. I've even like in a lot of people can take this in a very cocky mentality, or they might see it for what it is. But even if I look at something I like in someone's throw, and I'm like, I'll implement that myself. And I think I told him, it's like, well, I think I'm a better athlete than them. So if I do that, it's just going to go further. But
Yeah.
in my head, I'm really just kind of, I size people up in my head. I'm more confident that I'll come out on top in that regard. So
yeah,
I think that's a big piece too, is I don't count myself out in those regards.
absolutely. I was going to bring that one up if you didn't. So
Yeah.
you're supremely confident. That's which is good.
Yeah.
Like why are you doing anything if you don't believe you can get it done?
Yeah.
Like you have to believe it. If you don't believe it, then what are you doing? Like you're
biggest athlete.
yeah, my parents believed I could do it, so now I'm kind of going through the motions or something like that. But when you're confident, I'm basing this in my world or my niche. Like, yeah, I'm more athletic than that guy. He might be taller, but I'll just be quicker, And so you're finding your own way to be confident, and
Right.
that's something you've always been good at, even if it wasn't even reality. Like, you're like, oh, I forget the guy's name when we were, in college. You're like, he's a midget.
Oh yeah.
And I look at him as like, this man is not a midget. But you just made him in your mind a midget because, like, hey, I'm just going to be confident and get it done. And I only say confidence is not, and you said you touched on that, like, people might think that I'm cocky. Like, cockiness is when you don't base it in something real, you're like, I'm going to win no matter what. Like, okay, well, how are you going to win? It's like, I'm just better than everybody. Like, okay, now that's cocky because you're not basing it on anything. You're like, it's like, I'm confident that if I do X, I'll get X out of myself. And if I do that, then I know those marks will get me what I need. Or, so you're basing your confidence in reality stuff. Like, I'll just have to be fast. I'll have to drive quicker. If I'm not, as strong as somebody, then I'll use speed or some version of it. If they're faster than me, then I'm stronger than them. And so you're finding that type of stuff, and like, not that you're just trying to beat your field per se, but you're defining your dichotomy, or like like, this is how my advantage. This is how I'm going to beat people who might on the surface have something better than me.
Right.
Somebody's like a very good technician. It's like, yeah, but I'm just strong too, so I'm going to have a well-rounded mode of getting better. So cool. Glad you brought that one up, because if I said it, then it sounds backwards.
No, that is definitely a thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it makes you fun to coach too when somebody's confident. Like, it just is. Like, you say, like, hey, we're gonna go out there and win that thing. You're like, yeah, absolutely, we're gonna go do it. It's much better than like, hey, like, you can do this. Like, I don't know. Like, everyone else is so good. It's like, no. Like, let's go. We have our athlete. Let's go after him. And when the athlete's confident, that does a lot of the work, going into it and stuff, for sure. But cool. Anything else there?
No,
I got one other, but we'll see if you come up with it.
Damn. No, no.
No, I think you have a good training mentality as far as keeping it light. I don't think you over, like, if you have a bad day or bad meet, I don't think you beat yourself up too much about it. Like I think you're able to joke. You keep it light for the most part of training and stuff, and find like the fun side of stuff. And 100% that's an advantage. You want to take it serious, but not so serious that you don't have fun out there. We've had some good times out there, chatting it up and talking about stuff, and just doing the Bo Greer. Like, there's air pockets out there. I'm gonna throw this discus through the wall. Things like that. And it's like, I believe that you're like, oh, I can do that kind of stuff, but it also keeps it light. You don't take it so serious that there's anything there. So it's enjoyable to be out there and training and being in practice and stuff. And even in the weight room, where that was some of your least enjoyable moments. We're still having fun out there and still doing things. And I think that having a good training mentality is critical to continued success, especially having long success when you're hurting. You don't feel great, but like, hey, I'm still finding the enjoyment when I'm out there. It's something I think you're very good at as well.
Yeah, Appreciate it.
Yeah.
As far as the after comp mentality, I think it's obviously a spectrum of how hard you typically are on yourself. And I might have been somewhat decent before, but I really saw growth of that after having a kid, you know, and that's because you did have to learn how to check it at the door. And it's
Yeah.
like, all right, look, you can't just sit there and sulk in front of your son because he had a bad day. That doesn't exist to them. So I think that was actually one of the huge area of growth, and I'll expand on that later on. But
Yeah.
definitely, as far as being lighthearted and just kind of forgetting the bad and moving on. So
Yeah. No, having that perspective as, two fathers talking to each other, you want to model the person you want your kids to become.
yeah.
And if you're constantly like moping and sad on yourself, or like I'm not good enough, or whatever it might be, like you don't want your kids to see that. Like, so keep that higher purpose. And yeah, I think that's the transferable skill there, is like be better, be the image of what you think your other people want you to be, right? Live up to that, and I think if you can remember that, obviously you have a kid, you show up home, and you're the greatest thing no matter what you do. So live up to that. I think that's a good takeaway too, for sure. Yeah. Cool. As far as things that you've not been good at naturally that you've had to work on, what do you think as far as those? Seems like you have a pretty good skill set that you can rely on, but what's some areas you felt like, hey, I've had to work at this, and I'm seeing the benefits of it?
Right. So things that, again, if I'm looking at it in a field of what kind of weaknesses I might have, if strong legs or like stature and coordination are good things, then I would look at it in terms of stature is definitely something that you can't be ignored.
Yeah.
Average height on the field 6'5", and I'm sitting there barely pushing 6'1", then like you notice those things, but you try to you try to elaborate on your pros and not necessarily let that become of you. And so aside from that, other things outside of physicals, I'd say are consistency. I've put myself in a lot of situations over the past years where, especially early on in the season, just took way too long to shake off the rust, or like the comp rust. And which is great towards the end of the year when you're going, because your confidence level is going high heading into championship time. But the slow starts have definitely been a thing, and a lot of that can be attributed to mentality and training. And you can't just perform well when you feel good, but you want to set that bar when you're not feeling so good as well, which is something I noticed about myself. Aside from that, I mean, I can dive into consistency on recovery as well. My injuries are definitely a cause of other decisions and disciplines that I've had. And yeah, I'd say the off the field things, or out of practice things, have definitely been a big area that I've been working on over the past few years of getting better at, because of injuries that have happened and shortcomings that might have happened because of lack of sleep or lack of recovery, or even lack of diet. So
Yep. No, that's what I'd say. Like, one area I remember, not to put it out there too much, but in college, like, recovery habits were, I would say that's fair to say. Most people in college have bad recovery habits. There was times there it was like just getting going was tough, and I understand there's a lot on your plate as a college student, but like, if you could look back now and say like, hey, this is what I have to do to get things going. If I would have done that sooner, how much better off would I be? Could you elaborate more on things that, like some of your recovery habits that have been kind of game changers for you?
Yeah. So
you said sleep, but
right. I'll do it at the time, and then I'll do how I've grown since then. But, to kind of start off with sleep, especially after a bad comp early on, I might have a late day, or late night, just thinking up everything that I could have done better, rather than, and knowing I have training the next day. If I have a weight session the next day, and, staying up to 2-3 a.m. doesn't serve anybody anything good. And so if you show up to the next practice and you're on 5-6 hours of sleep, or even less, I mean, you've pretty much wasted that day away. And then you're also susceptible to injury in those moments. In terms of diet, in college, I was on the typical, just trying to survive type
Yeah, the
diet.
convenience diet. Yep.
Right. One meal a day. I think I did like one burrito from Taco Cabana right before practice, just trying to save up,
Yeah.
energy during that time frame. But, um, you know, and then in terms of recovery after, I don't think I even stretched. I might have gotten on a roller in college, and I suffered a lot of injuries, and I can even dive into those
Mhm.
specific ones. But I mean, certain injuries that the last one I thought was career ending, right? The torn groin off the bone. It's called an avulsion fracture.
Mhm.
Torn groin off the bone and a breaking of the hip with it. Is something that I saw early on in that season as the strain groin as a problem, and then I just kept ignoring that. And nowadays I do a lot more listening to my body. I've had the pleasure of working with Dr. Keating out there in Kansas, and he's taught me a lot about dry needling, a lot about Graston, a lot about different stretching and warm ups, what to focus on in those regards. So I'm a lot more educated with how my body works
Mhm.
and what specific muscles need to be attacked. Even as a father, I'm still managing to get 7 to 9 hours, depending on what Cassius has going on in his life at that point in time, what he has to in store for me. I try to get around that 8 hour mark, which is on a consistent basis, and to making sure that that doesn't necessarily get interrupted. And then diet wise, I'm dialed in terms of especially red meat, and
Yeah.
then in supplements, I'm in on collagen and creatine to the fullest extent, to where I didn't take any supplements really in college, or
Mhm.
nothing on a consistent basis. It just
Yeah.
kind of came and went. So
Yeah.
definitely a lot
Nice.
of areas of growth.
Yep. No, I'd say like to reiterate, sleep when you're like, even when you're doing good things, like, hey, I'm gonna burn the candle faster
Mm-hmm.
here by staying up to 2, thinking about like I'm gonna, like, even a good thing, like I'm gonna stay up late and think about how I'm gonna be much better when I hit training tomorrow and stuff. You have all these plans in your head that you can't like wind down for, even thinking about that stuff, and then you show up and you don't have. I mean, we don't have the neural capacity if you don't get good sleep. Like, it's just any skill development, any physical training, or technical training, just is out the window if you don't have sleep. And that's just one day of sleep depravity, let alone when you get into chronic stuff where you're just constantly lethargic and you're not firing in any kind of way. It's incredibly,
Yeah.
destructive. And it's always funny because you can kind of get away with it. I was like, oh, I kind of got away with it, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't really in the long run, right? And then you
Yeah.
make poor decisions too when you're sleepy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I saw a crazy stat, that some high number, like 92% of car accidents are sleepy people, which is just kind of
Wow.
wild to think about. You just make poor decisions. You're not going to make good, recovery decisions. You're not going to wake up. You're not going to warm up properly. You're just going to make poor decisions constantly when you're not sleeping well. So very important
Right.
there, obviously. And then, like, yeah, listening. It's a fun, because I know, like, from the history of you, and especially being a Texas athlete, like, you don't complain about an injury. You just knuckle
Mm-hmm.
down and keep working. Like, you don't want to show any weakness. Like, I remember,
Right.
like, your hand was busted up the year
Mm-hmm.
before I got to Texas State. Like, it was
Yeah.
busted up, and you didn't want a soul to know about your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it was annihilated. And you're like, nope, nope, just got to keep on it. So on the one hand, as a coach, you very, very much appreciate an athlete who's willing to throw with a messed up hand,
Mm-hmm.
but that's, if you don't have a hand, you can't throw anymore. It's important to
Right.
have a good working hand to throw, especially the shot put, but even the discus, you got to be able to grip it and stuff. So you want to balance the two of, like, hey, I'm tough and I'm going to work through things, and then, hey, I got to listen to it. Like, there's a line, there's a
Mm-hmm.
threshold I can't go over, because then I'm getting into injury and dysfunction. And
Yeah.
that's a hard line for people to understand. Like, I want to be
Mm-hmm.
tough, but I need to know this is now going to get into dysfunction. I've learned via, unfortunate circumstances now, that if I keep pushing this and I ignore this, it's going to be a devastating injury. So
Yeah.
yeah, learning that, and
Yeah.
that's always a moving target. That's what's so hard, right? you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. I guess the trend is trying to build sustainable practices, right? To
Yes.
where
Yep.
you're not only physically engaged to a certain extent, but you're cognitively understanding how to move at a certain speed. Um, there's certainly two ends of the spectrum, and I used to be completely
Right.
on the end where I'll sit there and show up on one leg and just kind of keep going just to prove a point.
Yeah.
Uh, and it doesn't really serve you much. But on the other end too, I've run into people that they just don't feel good or their tummy hurts or something of that sort, and they're like, all right, I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just decide to call it for the day.
Yeah.
And there truthfully is a healthy medium. Like if you are hurting, definitely still go out there and try to get something out of that training period. Listening to your body is extremely important nowadays. I call it like a dipping the toe in the pool kind of attitude, where if I'm doing a half turn to start off my discus practice, I'm stretching to the position and then I'm just trying to stay long out of it. I'm not accelerating on my first throw, and I might take 2 to 3 throws in those movements to really feel it out, especially if something's not feeling well.
Mhm.
And if I'm sitting there at like a 2, 3 out of 10, then you can actually do yourself a lot of good by getting that mobility and really stretching those muscles out to being able to contract them in the ways that they're supposed to, because there might just be some swelling or inflammation there that you need to work out, and you do that by movement. That is a big way. But understanding to not just go and balls to the wall essentially every single training. I used to have the mentality where you have this chip on your shoulder and it's almost like you're trying to prove it to yourself, and it's like, no, you're here for a reason.
Yeah.
So, let's get something productive out of it. And that doesn't always mean showing up to practice and going 85 to 100% every day, because your central nervous system can't hold on that long.
Yeah.
You can probably get away with it at a younger age, but I mean, I'm 30 now, and I certainly, I might give you 2 good days out of the week, and you can be separate. I can go.
Yeah, I think what you're describing here is kind of, and I should probably be better about describing this more often. So I'll use this venue here. It's like you want to do a minimum every day and a maximum. Like we kind of know what that is, and so if there's a minimum, like we want to throw, and then your thought is, can I do the same thing tomorrow?
Right.
So I have a minimum thing that I can do, and I have a maximum. Can I do the maximum every day? And usually the answer is no. But like, yes, I can do the minimum every day. So you're trying to push that up to like as close to that maximum as you can. But like, what can I do every day? Can I get to that point where, yes, I can do all of this tomorrow and the next day and the next day and weeks on end, where I'm pushing that ceiling, not quite to the maximum. Because if you go to the maximum every day, you're probably blown, right? And you're like, oh, I'm going to be so sore or whatever. So, and then the minimum is like, I'm going to come out and do something. That's my minimum. I can get a stretch in, I can feel like, hey, I'm going to feel this position. I can feel some kind of, resistance training option or something like that. That's my minimum. I make sure I can do that every day. And can I push that new, maybe like maximum I can do consistently? And I honestly think like that's the secret of consistent training, right? It's like I'm doing more than the minimum, but my level of I can keep doing this every day just keeps ratcheting up, and I can keep doing more and more, either intensity or some training throws volume or different things that way. That's like I can keep doing this every day, and that's what we kind of call, like I'm building up my base, which I hate that term, but that's kind of what it is. Like I can do things every day that are kind of extraordinary, like throwing a discus 60 meters every day is an extraordinary accomplishment to a lot of people. So you're like, hey, I'm just trying to get up to that point where that's not taxing to me. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, it's like come in and get the minimum, right? Yeah. But then what can I do to kind of push that a little bit without going to the maximum every day? And I think that's where young throwers fall apart. Hey man, it's Monday. You got 100% because it's Monday, but don't be expecting this on Friday. You're like, well, hold on, can we just stay, in a consistent mode of good effort? That's not just the minimum. I just need to show up, but like, I'm not burning myself. I'm burning the fences down every day, and then I just hit the wall and I'm done. Using a lot of cliche there, but.
Definitely thinking about the most efficient way to throw that certain distance that you value
Yeah.
And I don't know. So I used to be better about that in college because I had multiple events. So, you only have so many reps. You want to try to get
Mhm.
certain things out of them. And I was a little bit more even keel in that regard. But taking that time away and then coming back, from 2015 and then coming back in 2018, I had a certain chip on my shoulder. And I think for like 2 to 3 years there, I had to check myself just because I'd have these insane training practices, but just because you can throw far in training doesn't mean that you're just supposed to, because then you
Mhm.
show up that Saturday and you're wondering why it's not there. It's
Mhm.
like, well, one, your CNS is fried. Two, you're having a certain expectation there that's just not going to come through. And, you're really setting yourself up for failure by setting that specific expectation, haven't
Right.
seen it.
Yeah.
And it's been a mentality shift over the last 2 years that I've seen a lot more fruitful in kind of dialing that back and really just, telling yourself that, you can do it, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're supposed to. And I
Yeah. Yeah.
think a lot of people run into that, especially when they're peaked, right?
Yeah.
They finally feel good. And just because, they're throwing 3 meters further, they just want to keep doing it. And you see them
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
start dialing in, 20 throws over 3 meters over their PR. And you're like, they're not ready for tomorrow.
You're right.
they're
Yeah.
cooked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, I
so,
think that's a valuable skill to leave some in the tank for the most part.
yeah.
Like you can do it, but leave some in the tank for tomorrow. And
Mhm.
I think I first picked that up actually coaching jab throwers. I was just like, nope, leave some in the tank. Always leave some in the tank.
Right.
As soon as you throw all to 100% or all, 10 out of 10, you got to stay at 9 out of 10 at the most. Like you just don't, you got to leave some in the tank every time you throw. So, less important, I think, for discus where you can have the most volume of reps and whatnot. But yeah, for sure there. And then I wanted to touch on before we move on to is like the diet side of stuff. You mentioned red meat.
Mhm.
So good protein, good fat ratios,
Mhm.
and also iron. That's where natural creatine is most occurring. So like, hey, making sure red meat is a part of my daily type of thing
Right.
is important, right? Like you feel a big difference of
Mhm.
energy levels as a thrower and recovery levels when you're doing that consistently.
Right.
I speak to a lot of college kids who might not have that opportunity, but everybody can
Mhm.
get hamburger patties at least, or hamburger
Yeah.
meat and throw that in
Big
there.
meat.
It's not, yeah, it's not filet mignon every day. It's or
Yeah.
ribeyes every day. It's just making sure you have, and if you don't subscribe to that, like you don't like red meat for whatever reason, making sure you get the other nutrients that are part of that. Like
Mhm.
nuts, almonds have more fat to them, also protein. There's things that you can do to kind of supplement that, but making sure
Yeah.
that's a good priority. And then you also touched on supplements, like supplementing with creatine, protein, collagen,
Mhm.
joint health supplements, things like that too, have also been key. You
Mhm.
touched on Dr. Keating as well, who's a chiropractor, but also has been more with soft tissue type of stuff as well for you. So
Yeah. Soft
having
tissue's good.
yeah, having a good person in your corner. I think we kind of get
Mhm.
spoiled with some of our AT people in college, but having
Mhm.
like somebody who's in your corner as far as like, hey, this is where I'm at. What more can I do if it's grassed in or dry
Yeah.
needling, things like that. Some and
And
being able to
trail.
test those those out,
Mhm.
which again is accountability stuff too. Is like, hey, does this work? Does this get the outcome I'm looking for? Like I feel
Right.
X tight. I feel pain here. I feel tightness here. Having somebody you can also talk to and advocate with. It's like no. And again, this I get frustrated too, just with uh, training room type of stuff.
Mhm.
A lot of times people show up as like, fix me, like I'm a broken thing, put me back together, please. And
Yeah.
training room and recovery, prehab and rehab is all trial and error. Like this
Mhm.
is my test. This hurts when I do X, and I want it to either hurt less or I need to get stronger through this so I don't have this inefficiency. And it's like it's
Mhm.
trial and error. Like I need to continually be doing this thing that is bothering me,
Right.
um, but I need to get it better. Like this is my
Mhm.
test. Like I can't feel a stretch X way or something like that, or my hand hurts this amount when I press this way. Well, that's your test. Can I make sure I'm getting progress in it? Uh, and like trainers like say, or healthcare professionals will just be like, well, let's try this and see if you get relief. And a lot of times people are like, yeah, just fix it. Like, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
no, it's a process. You have to, and I think that's something you've also been good at, that you've learned is,
Mhm.
yeah, this is working for me. This gets the result I need. I need to stay on this because you believe in that. Hopefully we can
Mhm.
get people to do that prior to having, devastating injury. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Definitely.
for sure.
Definitely.
So yeah, all those things are very good. Any other areas? Or I know we've touched on some others, but some things that you've adapted, learned.
Yeah. 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 So just I want to say stature would probably be the best way to describe it. I think that was kind of my discovery in 2022. I remember that conversation I had with you. I think I said I felt like a potato in the ring. It's just like the most undynamic person trying to do rotation. And I hopped on the scale, and I mean, I was probably sitting around 285, which is body weight, but in terms of stature, sitting at 6 foot and being that heavy set and not necessarily being dynamic within those movements, I knew that it was a cause for me to drop down. I'm probably sitting more in that 260 range, which I think is a happy spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of attribute that to, I guess, part of it's wrong mentality, but the other part of it is doing multiple events in
Mm-hmm.
college. I think that weight would probably sit me good in the shot put at that specific time.
Mm-hmm.
And, to finally change that and become more dynamic towards one event, which for me was the discus,
Mm-hmm.
was important. And I saw a lot of success come from that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I
not,
think the turning point too, sorry, before you go in, is you're talking about, okay, well, body weight. Like, you're
mm,
moving your body across the circle. You want to be dynamic, you want to be fast, right?
mhm,
But then there's this adage of, okay, well, I need mass to move mass.
right.
And you're trying to balance those two things. But then I remember that conversation, like, well, how much do discus throwers weigh?
Mhm,
Like, this isn't something that, like, we're trying to make an educated decision on what's my ideal
right.
body weight. Well, what do most discus throwers weigh? And so, like, trying to actually figure that out and research, like, like we've seen, like, say, Jared Rome on the bigger side, on the bigger
Mhm,
scale. It's like, hey, he looks like he could just jump in and be a shot putter.
yeah.
Is one side, and you have, like, Stahl right now, and
Mhm,
like, see, he's a massive individual, but, like, okay, well, how much does Che weigh, or
mhm,
Gerd Conter, or some of these other guys that are like, they probably are living in somewhere that 260 range, and, like, okay, well,
right.
we we don't want to just be heavier, just be heavy, which we
Mhm,
might think, like you're saying, when I was
right.
doing multiple events, or maybe I can be more stable with a little bit heavier body weight. And some events, that is a boon, but, like, say, like, hey, I gotta also make sure that I'm I'm enhancing my performance outcome by one of these things, i.e. body weight, and
Mhm,
trying to have a good strength to body weight ratio. That's how we define power. So being able
right.
to play with that, and not, like, body weight is such a personal thing that we aren't even really supposed to talk about a whole lot, but
Mhm,
it's vital to performance, and you need to know, like,
it
this
is.
this affects my outcomes, and not be afraid to check that, and adjust that, and play, like you did go to heavier, like, hey, this isn't working for me, maybe if I lean up I'll have more success that way, and not
Mhm.
having it over tied to one aspect, but, like, that's one component I need to be mindful of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I definitely see it a lot more trendy the other way, where a lot of people think in terms of the power end of the spectrum, the strength side, and when they
Mm-hmm.
gain weight, they're going to be mass moves mass, and you see a lot of success that way. But I mean, power is speed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Those two marry together, and so um, I remember our conversation. You said, as long as the weight room doesn't necessarily suffer. So I set those base marks in the weight
Mm-hmm.
room. And, as I began to drop weight, I actually saw my Olympic lifts go up. And
Mm-hmm.
those are extremely in parallel,
Mm-hmm.
to power, to
Correlation.
power
Yep.
up. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and a lot of that was, I mean, did the bar feel heavier? Yes, but I had a lot more mobility and a lot more speed to get under there
Mm-hmm.
and really move it. And so I had really good feelings of hopping into last season because of that. And
You're right.
so focusing on that speed aspect and not necessarily just the strength and gaining weight is important.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Well, this is something too, to kind of dovetail off that, like, a lot of what I learned, weight room and training is most of the information out there is bodybuilders. And like they say like, okay, well, if you want to gain a lot of mass and size, body like muscle size, you have to eat in excess. So there's a bulking phase with most bodybuilders. But then now it's come back actually because it's too hard to cut and maintain the muscle. You need to mass gain intelligently. And I think throwers live in that realm. Like you're trying to get strong intelligently. And so the old adage used to be just like seafood. If you seafood, eat it. Like seafood, eat it. Everything, just eat everything in sight and gain weight. But you want to gain strength intelligently. You want to gain, for us it's strength. We don't like body weight can be part of it. Like if you're really undersized, we need to gain mass. But that's more. We want to still do it intelligently. You want to, if you make mass gains, it wants to be functional, right? You don't want to, like you said, you want to be a potato. You know what I mean? And I think that that's something that you always play with. So like training intelligently, and so like if I need to cut some lbs, I want to do it intelligently without losing my strength. Because and that's where I said this, and it was me reading about bodybuilders like, hey, the old, let's just get a lot of mass. It's so hard to cut it down effectively. So now it's like, hey, can we just train, eat to where we have excess of the nutrients we need so that you're able to make good gains, but not be so deprived, and that's be intelligent with how you're approaching your gains in that regard. So I think that's just a beneficial skill to have that transfers outside of athletics too, for sure.
Right. Awesome.
Nice. Sorry, I kind of cut you off, but I wanted to jump in on that one because
you're good.
What's your ideal training weight is so trial and error. There's just no way around it. You have to go try to gaining a little heavy, try being a little bit down, and see how you feel. And that's not something that you should tie your self-esteem to, although we do that a lot in our society. But or your confidence as an athlete, like, hey, I have to be light, so I feel like I look good, or something like that is different than your ideal performance mentality. And that's, in this day and age, like for us, so like say collegiates, you have 4 years, you don't get a whole lot of time to trial and error, but you need to do it, as soon as possible and as efficiently, effectively as possible to get the most out of yourself, for sure. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Any others there?
Well, in terms of technical expertise, it's been a lot of growth over the last, 4 years, or since I re-engaged with you in 2018. Whenever you spoke to it a little bit in terms of in college having a short amount of time, and then also picking up those multiple events, it was almost, and this might just be a mid-major mentality and maybe a little bit kind of goes into the Power Five, but the technical cues are very general and not necessarily, it's almost like you're zooming out on the lens where you give something simple and effective, which again, in the discus, it might've been pendulum and a quick left. And now, we're stretching to positions, we're keeping head neutral, we're accelerating out of specific areas. And so I've been doing this for 6 years now, where we're focusing on one event and we zoom in on a microscope essentially on the throw. And it's to the point where I hate looking at any of my throws from college, but continuing to grow technically in that one specific area has definitely been areas of growth for me. So
yeah, for sure. No, I wish, like, people say this all the time. It's like, well, just, teach me how to do it well, or just tell me how to do it. And it's like, well, you have to learn that, I think it's always the biggest issue is the most important thing to fix, like, so I remember when you were throwing, like, hey, you had a wide orbit, but like it was creating other problems. Like, hey, we want to pendulate, we want to move the discus X way, not just keep it wide, so it's like, that's the most important thing. You do that, you'll be much more consistent. But now you're like, okay, well, I know how to do all that. Well, okay, now we're trying to get all of a power position. You know what I mean? You have both feet down, the discus is way back, and you create a monster whip type of thing. Whereas, you could throw 56 a lot of different ways, and your degree of error gets smaller and smaller, like you're describing. And I wish there was a way to just be like, oh yeah, Darian, just we'll just superimpose you over somebody else, and then he can throw the discus just as well as you. It's like, nope, nope, you have to learn it. You have to earn it. You don't get to just be told what to do. And that kind of talks back to like, some of your strengths before is being aware of things. And it's intelligence too. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
And so some of that's like, oh man, I wish back then, but yeah, it's hard to say. You haven't had a great career or anything like that because you're very high achieving in a lot of events. We didn't touch on your intro too, but you school record in the hammer. You're good in the weight. You were a man. You get to put on a different hat and throw far and everything but the javelin. So, which that speaks to your ability to understand technique. I've had guys just as physically capable, but not technically as capable. You were able to transfer things well between different events, which is phenomenal. Like most people can't say these weren't like terrible school records either. Like you were high achieving and you hit benchmarks in every event, which was, a tribute to your understanding of how to do technique, force application. So very good there. But yeah, the third thing I'd say is like, is there any stories or of struggles you've overcome, light bulb moments? I know we've kind of touched on some of those, but
yeah,
struggles overcome. You touched on like, so to be specific, you did tear your groin as a senior. What was this senior in college? What was the actual name of the tear?
It was called an avulsion fracture of my adductor longus. Yeah, so it was one of my groin muscles pulled off the bone and broke a piece of my hip off with it.
Yeah,
kind of what the situation was. But look, it's senior year. Mentally, you want it to be your best year. Once I realized I wasn't getting the red shirt, I wanted to put my best foot forth, and you kind of had the mentality that nothing was going to stop you. And so I felt a strained groin the very first meet. I think it was at Texas Relays in early March, and the injury happened, I want to say late April. Mm-hmm. So this had been going on and been ignored for a month and a half, maybe going on 2 months. And we continued to train through it. At that point in time, we had a grad assistant as an athletic trainer. So I'd advise, whoever is listening to this to go find a professional that's been in the seat long enough to adequately describe what you're feeling, and we can, figure out how to fix it. Right. So I think that was definitely a mistake. Me continuing to train idiotically in a sense. I'm still doing 3 events, and although I wasn't competing, I was definitely still training. And eventually things were going to come to a head because my recovery wasn't where it needed to be. I ignored the injuries, and we misdiagnosed what I had happened. So despite the injury, I still showed up to conference and regionals. It's like, well, my season's over. The doc's telling me, well, it's completely torn off, so it can't get worse.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna kind of tie your right leg to your left leg, and we're just gonna send you out there, biting on a towel here. Just
yeah. And that's like, because this is the story I wanted to say. So you had that tear, which happened right early outdoor season, correct?
I had the strain the first meet of the season, but it tore a week out from conference.
Outdoors.
Yeah, outdoors.
Yeah, because I wasn't coaching you that year. I went to Northern Arizona, and I'll never forget this because I had a discus thrower there, and it was at UT, which the Shadow, Texas State is just south of there. Those are our stomping grounds the year before. But the regional meet was at University of Texas, and you were there. And obviously you're my boy. Of course we're hanging out a little bit, and that discus comp got delayed, and we were hanging out underneath the stadium there, just waiting for the go mark. And I'll never forget this because it just was so Darian to me, and that's part of why it's been so fun to coach you, because you'd torn it all off. It was done. You're like, hey, it's not going to get any worse, but it's going to hurt like hell. This is absolutely this is a career-ending injury. Like maybe he'll never be able to move the same again. Right. And you had it was like this blue like
Neoprene.
super underwear thing that you were wearing that it could strap you
Mhm.
in, strap it up there. And I'll never forget this too, because like there was such a marked difference between you and the discus thrower I had there, because he was just like, his mind wasn't right. He was like, oh, all these delays, I had to warm up, I got one throw. Oh, this is just so hard. And I was like, this is happening to everybody, not
Yeah.
just to you. You just have to be top 12 to make nationals. And
Hmm.
like we were sitting there talking, like the three of us essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know where Rob was at the time, but like we were just hanging out, and you're like, you're torn off, you know, you have your groin torn,
Yeah.
and it's not even there. You're like, I can still do this. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
matter, and you're like rubbing your hands together, like, yep, he's already out. He's already taken himself out of this thing,
Yeah.
and and so I'll just never forget it. And like we walked away, and this athlete here was like, this man is crazy. Like, why would he think this? This is so stupid. Why would he keep throwing? I was like, man, I
Mhm.
love it. I love that
Yeah.
this guy, you know, still believes in himself, even though a normal person, you know, like you talk about hardships and overcoming, is like you still believed in yourself there, and like you were still gonna make you're still gonna make nationals, you're still gonna do what it took. Like I was like, I wasn't coaching at the time, but I was so proud of like, oh, this is awesome to see somebody who still, you know,
Yeah.
loves this and believes in this, and like I get goosebumps just thinking about that, and like nothing was gonna set you back. Like, and the reality is you couldn't physically do it, but your mind was still like, hey, I got to do this stuff. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. It would have been cool to punch my ticket off one leg. That would
yeah,
definitely been.
yeah, yeah. But like, geez, I'll never forget that. That's like one of my like just moments where I just like, this, I love this guy. I love this man. He just is still in it, you know. And I like, no, whatever. Is like if you would have rode off in the sunset, an amazing career there, but like, no, I want to come back. I don't want this to be my end. And
Mm.
now here you are, you know, 6 years later, making USAs and doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't say it's like a miracle story, but like that, no, that could be a career ending injury. And now
Yeah.
you're high achieving. So I can't elevate you enough or prop you up enough for that, just period. You know, the most lesser people would have given up way, way, way before, you know. So props to you there. And that's one story, like for sure. Like we have a lot of stories that we can
Mhm.
elaborate on or talk about, but that's one for sure I wanted to share. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget that, seeing that, and just how stark of a difference you could tell, like, oh, the lightning. Oh, you know, there's no way I can throw far. I've had to warm up 6 times, you know, because they kept
Mhm.
like, hey, we're on, we're off, we're on, we're off, we're on, we're off, and
Yeah.
you're just like, I got this, I can do this. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that I hope every athlete can aspire to, is that belief in yourself that I can do things in spite of hardship, you know, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was a good times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I think more towards exit college and kind of go into professional. Some more moments I think were real big for me was last year where I had mental breakthrough with one, how to approach practice, and then kind of reinstilling that confidence, because it's not just always going to be up here. There's definitely some peaks and valleys. Um, Towards the end of the year last year, I think I had maybe 3 meets left, and at this point in time, we still hadn't qualified for USA's.
Hmm.
I'm just early on. I think I spoke to it. Shaking the rust off just took way too long, and we're really just trying to pop something off. So I was just finding meets and flying out to them just to compete, and kind of approaching each one of not necessarily finally not worrying about the distance and the number, but more so the execution in the ring. And it seems fairly logical, but when you take the emotion out of it, it seems logical, but emotions will definitely cloud
Hmm.
your thoughts and your approach, and you're just kind of focused on this number, and you're trying to hit the automatic standard, or you're trying to get top whatever you need to get into that year to get into USA's. And so to finally say, if it happens, it happens, just leave it all out there, was the mentality the last 4 meets. And it is set up for a pretty awesome finish to the year right before
Yeah.
and my consistency was right there. So, I knew I was going to pop off a big one because I think I had like 2 or 3 meets lined up where like 4 out of the 6 throws were all grouped in that 59 to 60 meter range. And then, I just remember I had one more meet to hit. And I think I told you it was going to happen. And I just remember the situation was like, it was almost like everything was setting it up for things to go wrong. So there was a tornado. It was out in Oklahoma. There was a tornado that hit it the day before. So people couldn't leave their hotel. So I didn't have a hotel room. The hotel room I originally had booked, we were refunded. And so I didn't have a way to get there. I think I was trying to fly in, but then flights kept getting delayed. I didn't get into like 11:30 or midnight the day before I competed and certain things of that sort. And anybody that called me to check up on me that day to see how things were going, I'm like, I'm just going to show up. If I show up, I qualify. And that's just the mentality to have. And it's like, if I'm there, it's going to happen. And then for the PR to happen, I think it was like 1.5 meter PR to pop up and actually hit the auto standard for the first time in my life was a major achievement. And it was really just my mental state being there at the same time my physical state was. And so it was an amazing feeling to finally feel like I had a huge area of mental growth to carry on into this year. So.
Yeah, for sure. No, 100%. And I think that's something that transcends every athlete, because what you're describing is like my expectations are exceeding like a reality, right? It's like, it's a weird thing to think of, but when you lower your expectations, like, hey, if I just execute in the circle, that's really all you have to worry about any time. I just need to execute in the circle, and I'll just do that well, and whatever the result is the result, right? Like I can't change my body state drastically by getting a better night's sleep the night before or hitting a good lift or something like that. So I'm just like, well, if the meet's on, I'm going to go throw, and I'll just do my best. And I'm at this point where I'm okay if I don't make this meet right now. And then you have your PR, you know what I mean? So it's weird trying to tap into that, because like I've coached so many athletes over the years. It's like when the chips are down in almost every capacity, that's when you throw PRs. Like it's just weird. Like why is that a thing, as opposed to when you're like timed up, you're feeling good about everything. And it really seems like it boils down to like, what expectations do you have on your outcomes? Now, if you're thinking I have high expectations on my performance or my ability to execute X, technical cue or something like that, that's different. When he's like, hey, I got to throw 65 or I'm done. You know what I mean? You're like, no, I'm just going to, you have these expectations of something. Because we talked about this with Brooke, like most of her college PRs were like sick, whatever. It's like, I'll just go down there and just try to do my best, and amazing things. And so having you do that too, I think that's something to keep in mind, is you want to be performance minded, like executing your technique, but then outcome is just going to be the outcome. I don't have to worry about that so much. And I'm working hard enough to have my physical state good, to be strong. I'm working technique that if I just go there and I execute a similar type of, or this type of motion, and I keep my expectations down on outcome, you have a chance to do something amazing, which, yeah, for sure. It's a good one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, like I said, we got stories for days. But yeah, those two are definitely two of the bigger ones, mentality wise, that I saw a lot of growth in.
Yeah, I have another story I'm going to share. So you were at practice, just out of sorts at Texas State. This one day, just out of it. I'm like, Darian, are you all right? What's going on? I was like, I'm good. I'm just gonna try to get through this. I was like, and like you threw a few reps. Like, Coach, can I go? I was like, yeah, whatever. Like you can go, but like let's be better tomorrow. Flash forward, like I don't know how long. We like you got hit by a car. Somebody was pulling into the gas station on the way to the track, and you got smoked by a car.
Yeah.
And you still showed up to practice. So like when somebody says like, hey, I'm not feeling good or my tummy hurts a little bit, Like I think
Yeah.
of I want this story out there. Darian got hit by a car and still showed up to practice. Now you weren't at 100%, but you literally got hit by a car.
Pretty messed up.
Like, what's the side of
Yeah.
your story here? Like put this out there because this is a phenomenal. Like one, it's a miracle you didn't get messed up bad, but like what's your side of this year?
Yeah, it was funny. So it was the Shipley's Donuts. There was a Shipley's Donuts right across the street, and if I had training in that morning, then I would just try to go grab one meal before. It's part of my terrible diet in college, and I'd just go grab some kolaches beforehand.
Kolaches, yep.
Yeah, it was like I think we had like an 8 or 9 a.m. practice, and so I'm going over there like 6, 7 a.m. and there's like this drunk sorority girl on her way back home, and she turns the corner, and I can't tell you how fast she was going, but it was enough for me to kind of react. I remember jumping up once I saw it, and I land on the hood of the car, roll off to the side, and she's just crying because I'm pretty sure she just wanted her night to end, which was my morning. And I'm taken back because I'm like, man, this really happened. So a part of me also, like, I wasn't emotional and she was, so she kind of got that side of me when she was crying, and I was like, no, you're good, just keep going. She has like a crater sitting in the hood of her car. I'm like, I messed it up pretty bad, but yeah, so I just go inside, I grab the kolaches. People are like, you okay? And I'm ready to get out. I'm kind of embarrassed. So I'm like, just give me my kolaches, let me get my money. I gotta go. So I show up to practice, and I'm like throwing, my back's thrown out, and I'm just still sitting there trying to throw. I can barely breathe. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it has something to do with it. But yeah, I remember going to the training room, and they set up, I think it was like an MRI, and they said, yeah, your rib, you did something bad to your rib. I think it was just dislocated. But so we did that, and that was like the week before conference. And I'm like, come on, like I'm trying to, I think I was up for winning the weight, or I had to compete with one guy for the weight, and then the shot put. I think I was probably in the running there too. But yeah, it was pretty awesome because the trainers were just loading me up on ibuprofen. That was like the only thing that they could give me. And they set my rib back, and they're like, well, it's going to be disgruntled. It's kind of like throwing out your back. And we left 2 days later to go to conference. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, we just got to get it done on one throw. Like, you're throwing a 35-pound ball. It's heavy. You just threw out your back. You probably got one good one in you. So I just remember I just hit it on the final throw, or not the final throw, the first throw. And like, was that good enough? And they're like, oh, that's the conference record. I was like, I'm done.
Well, what's amazing to me is I had no clue.
Yeah.
I mean, like I knew something was off, and I knew you're down. And I'm thinking, like, oh shoot, did I train? Did I too heavy weights? What did I do wrong? Because you were just out of sorts, and like you hid the whole you hid it from me for like ever. It was in Kansas where I think I learned that you got hit by a car that day. Yeah. Like you literally got hit by a car. He still showed up to practice and tried to fake it. You went and bought some kolaches.
Yeah, I'm not the best advocate for myself, but yeah, I didn't know what else to do. It's like, I'm just gonna live life like I did before.
Yeah, man, wow. So like when I have somebody show up with like, I didn't sleep very well, and like, can I miss practice? And like, hey, I'm gonna tell you the story now, and I want this out there. Darian got hit by a car. He dented the whole front side. Like, he landed on top of the hood and rolled off to the side. Did you lose a shoe or something too? I might be confusing different. Yeah, I think you lost a shoe. So the people were worried you were concussed or whatever. And you're just like, no, I'm here to get some kolaches.
I was just like scraped up. So, like, I went back home, put long sleeves on so people wouldn't see, and just headed out to practice.
Yeah. You had a bruise on your back from the collision, or like on your leg or something too. You're like, I just kind of hit into something. Like, it's no big deal. Yeah. This man got hit by a car and still went to practice. So this story needs to be out there for sure. So one, it's a miracle you didn't get hurt worse. Just that or you're you are a superhero. You are a Superman. We just don't know. So, it's one of those two. Yeah,
all of these stories I would not advise.
This dude is Superman. Like, he just got hit by a car and like went and broke a conference record. So unreal. No, and they said, like, it's a tribute to, like, hey, you you weren't gonna let there be any excuses. It's a tribute to like that willpower too, because like and those are the two stories for sure. Is like this guy's special because most people is just like, no, I ain't seen you for a month. If that happened to a lot of other people for sure, like yeah, they got hit by a car, they got in a car accident, whatever it is, and like nope, I'm just gonna chill. I'm gonna play it safe, and you're like, nah, I got this still, and you go do something amazing, you break a record, like it's just wild, yeah, wild. The Legend of Darian.
Yeah, the legend.
The Legend of Darian Brown.
And
Yeah.
no weight throw.
Hey, you were runner up in the shot too there, right? Like
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
Arkansas
runner
State
up.
guy. He was just out of your reach that year, but for sure
Mhm.
I think you were going for the double. Got hit by a car earlier in the week and then going for the double still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huge. Huge. Any other stories? Those are the two that are most stand out. I mean, we've got some, but some that I
As I said,
think.
TCU was just funny.
What was that?
The hammer at TCU was just funny. It
Oh
was
yeah.
made a bet with me. If I broke the school record, I wouldn't have to compete again. I don't even know if he thought I was gonna do it. It's like I'm just gonna figure this thing out. It's like if
Yeah.
you tell people to stay long on the hammer, it's like I'm just
Yeah.
gonna do that on my last throw. It's like a back and forth between me and yeah.
Yeah. No, when you broke the hammer school record, because
I
like
was like,
that was one of those things. Is like you had your mind made up that you were a discus thrower, like pretty
yeah,
much the whole time. But like, man, your shot was going like, and then your hammer, like, hey, we were only training once a week, and you're like this man's throwing an 18-pound, like
yeah,
almost 60 meters, like at the time, like, hey, dude, you'd probably be a first team All American much easier in this event than anything else if you just kind of stay focused. So it's like, to me, I just want points, right? I want you to get to nationals and score and do the things that so like. But there was a time like I generally don't know which event you're going to end up being best at, and I was like, hey, just break the school record in the hammer, and then we can just go. Because like at that point, like you were digging your heels, and it's like, nope. I'll throw the shot because I kind of enjoy that, but like I
mhm.
want to throw the discus far. It's like, okay, but just break the school record, and then everybody's happy, right? And then just throw a conference. You're like, all right, mission accomplished.
This week is done.
And yeah, Huck, that
Back and
was
forth.
that was a fun comp. That was up there. Yeah, there was a lot of good mojo that happened there.
Hmm.
Yeah, multiple. Did you set it first, and then Jordan took it from you? You
Yeah,
let him hold it for a throw, and then took it back. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, broke
Yeah.
it on my or like I think my third throw or second throw, and he broke it on the fourth, and then I had like two more throws left, and on the
Yeah.
last one, I was like, all right, what do I have to do? It's like, he tells people to stay long on it. I'm just gonna do that. I was like, it worked. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm the guy now.
Yeah. That was fun too because like it's rare that you're competitors, but also like good people too. Like good friends. Like I wouldn't say like the best of friends, but like you're still competing, but like
Yeah,
seeing like you two cheering each other on for that, but still trying to beat them the
right,
next throw, which I thought there was such a cool balance there that's hard to see. Like, I mean, I've
right.
I've had people that were close to me, at my school or rivals, we'll say, and I had a hard
Hmm.
time being friendly with them or like celebrating them there. But like you two were just you celebrated each other's victories too, even though you were like, oh, I want to be that guy, I want to be the
Yeah,
one to break it and stuff. So it was cool. There's a lot of good things happening there that there's good character stuff and fun athletic stuff too, which I love to see.
yeah,
Love to see.
yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
Any other stories there that you can think of?
No, I mean, no, it was. I think you were there for 10 months, and we really made a lot of impact during those 10 months. I mean, throughout those 10 months, but we broke all four school records together, and
Yeah,
uh, I think discus was the only one I didn't get. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it was bound to happen if we stayed for that extra year. But
yeah,
no, it was incredible. It
yeah,
was an awesome junior year. So, it's been a pleasure to actually come back and work with you as a post collegiate and kind of revamp this whole process. I know that first year, to get married and come out. Me and my wife got married, and she was a shot putter under you, and we came out as soon as we got married, maybe a week after. There were a lot of doubts, but it's been extremely fruitful. I think I told somebody at this camp I put on, had I just shut it down at that point in time, I would have never been able to discover, the accolades that came 3-4 years after. And I mean, 63, if it all ended today, 63 meters still sounds way better than 58.
Yes.
It's a completely different league
Yes.
of conversation. And, I still think that there's a lot more there. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. No question there. You've been throwing very well lately. So it's exciting. And again, like we just got to control those expectations and just execute. But yeah. Any other further words of wisdom? I know you said it earlier, you wanted to touch on being a father or how that's shaped it. Did you feel like you covered that, or is there anything else that?
Yeah, no. Well, one, being a dad has taught me to kind of be more segment minded. Whenever you're training, to be fully engaged. Whenever you're at work, to be fully engaged, and really learn how to check things at the door.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that you want to hang on to, take a note. My phone is just rattled with notes of either technical expertise or to-do lists for the day. And that's kind of how I keep myself organized. But all of the emotions, to really just kind of leave it out the door. I think in college, not only myself, but a lot of my teammates, it's like you have a bad day and then all the worries just kind of seep into your soul. You're just like, am I meant to do this? What am I doing? Until you have the next good day, and it's just not meant to be that way. You're probably, I think I heard the story of thirds, where you're going to have one, a third of your training is going to be really good. A third of your training is going to be, even, and then you're going to have a third of your training be bad. Right. And so that might just be one of the bad ones, and to make sure that you check at the door. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned as of lately that I try to tell anybody is that sustainability methodology, just to go out there and try to get better, but that doesn't necessarily mean to physically be going 100% all the time, because your body can't do that. You might get away with more than one day when you're younger, but that's going to be due to an injury, of some sort. And if you want to have longevity, to build sustainable training sessions is important. And let's see. I mean, I've had the injuries. I've come back from them. I've been able to recover and to build further and further. And I just think that that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned, that a lot of people either coming out of high school or in college have that same problem. They want to go out every day and prove it to themselves, but you're there for a reason. Either you got recruited for a reason or you're in college for a reason. Trust that you have that ability, and then focus on production. And production doesn't always mean just ramming into a wall every single day, all the time.
Yeah. No, I want to peel back on that. Like you said, the thirds, so you have, and I've heard it differently, but some kind of the same type of thing is you have, it's 7 or 8 out of 10 are going to just be average. These are comps, these are training throws, it's just average. You're going to have one good one and one terrible one that you're embarrassed of. And this is like every 10 reps you do, every 10 comps you do. And it's, so it's something like that, some version of that. So like those were saying the good and the bad are smaller. That's kind of the root of the same idea, right? And if you're like, okay, well, I want my average to keep getting better, right? And that's what you're training for. You want the average to be elevated. You want those things there, but like understand we're all human. Like you're gonna have bad and you're gonna have really good, and you want to just keep elevating that average, right? And that's really what you're training for. And so don't go out there and I think this is root of what you're saying. You don't have to go out there and have amazing things happen every day. You want you want to bump up that average. You want to bump up your walk around ability, and hopefully like as you do that, your terrible throws get better too, and so you're just trying to elevate the floor the whole time, or like I've always said, like raise your shit level. What can you do when everything's bad? And yeah, I think that's just good knowledge to take away for anybody. And the other side too is, like you said, segmented or compartmentalizing, right? So if you're at practice, be all in, be 100% at practice. Check everything else out. Be there, get as good as you can, and then close the door on it, get to the next area. And, being compartmentalized is a huge skill that so many people struggle with, be present where you're at. And I think that's the secret of being a good parent too, right? It's like when it's family time, it is family time. You know what I mean? Like if it's wife time or significant other time, be there for that, and be compartmentalized. And sometimes, like, hey, we want to talk about our day and whatever else, but for the most part, be the best version of you in that realm there, and just keep that there. And I think that's a huge skill. And that's very, very beneficial for college kids, that might hear this too. Is like when it's time to study, get good at the knowledge. When it's time to be a class and be engaged. And then you just shut the door on that, come to practice, and then when you have that ability to, have some social interactions or whatever, just make sure that that's a part that you're making smart decisions on, but still be there for your friends, be whatever, and have that good social interactions, good, healthy social interactions. But yeah, and being compartmentalized in that, not letting all those things bleed together, especially when it's bad for the others to be that way,
Right.
But I think that what you're describing too is just be good at what you're doing, right? Like make sure that you're giving it the time, effort, energy to be good at everything that is important to you, right? And if you do that and you just want to be good at everything, then you will if you just work at it. So it's a great message for sure.
Of course.
Any other words of wisdom or things you'd like to put out there?
I mean, I think those are the biggest things that at least stick with me. I mean, we spoke about the recovery piece, and I imagine anybody that would even look at this video wants to be good. So the want to shouldn't, I mean, that should be an automatic, right? But the pieces that people don't focus on, that is the work to carry you on from day to day, often get ignored in your younger age. But too often the realization doesn't come until an injury does happen, or until something permanent happens that you can't undo. So to learn from my mistakes would probably be the best thing that I could relate forward. To take care of yourself and to, build sustainable practices consecutively and build on each other and to be present in the moment. So
yeah, great stuff. And I think the other thing too, I would say, is just if you believe in yourself and you're confident, you'll find a way, right? I think if there's anything that, you've had a lot of hardships, with injuries and things like that, and still finding a way to compete and adapt and get better, and I think you're very adaptable as far as that goes. So I think that's a big thing, is like what you think is the right way to get there might not be the best way. Your perceived way of getting there is like, be adaptable and like, hey, I'm going to get there, no matter what, I'm going to get there. Like, I just need to find a way to get that out of myself. And I think that's, good for anything, just, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to be good at this. I'm going to find out. I'm going to get there no matter what. And I have to be adaptable to change, because it might not be the way that I see everyone else getting there. I might have to find my own way to do it, but I'm going to get there. Yeah. I think your story epitomizes that for sure.
Yeah, definitely.